And we are live on a Wednesday evening. Flashback, the old crew back together here to talk about a great papacy debate. Thrilled to be back with all of you three brothers. Even though we have not been on a show together in a while, we keep in touch very often. And just glad to be here with all of you all. Before we even dive into what we're going to be talking about, want to go around the virtual table, if you will, and say, how's everybody doing? Eric, brother, how you been, my friend? How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, William, for having me on. I've been great. I've been real busy. As everybody knows, I work in the blue collar world, so it's full time. I'm grateful for the small pockets of time I have to read theology and history. I've just this past month I've filled up my calendar in January for pockets that people want to interview me for this or that. But this one is particularly exciting. So
very, very throwback to the old days, the old crew
Yep.
back together. Elijah, brother, how you been, my friend?
Been well, man. Thank you. Blessed. Can't complain. Life's been good. Just been busy with work. It's winter, and as you guys know, I'm in the heating cooling business. So
yeah,
Michigan, it's pretty cold.
Well, you run a mechanical engineering operation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Something
I imagine during this time of the year you are quite busy.
Yes. Yeah, we've been pretty busy. Yeah, it's been
good.
It's like things like
that is good though, right?
Oh yeah. I love we get busier in the summer, believe it or not, but it's still pretty steady. Yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. Brother, Subdeacon, no stranger to this channel. How have you been, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, William. I'm very excited to beat Elijah in this debate.
Very happy to have all of you all. Thrilled to be back with all of you all. We're going to be talking about, as you all know, the debate between Erick and Ubie Petrus. Now we know is Denny. Now, I do want to make a very brief comment before anything, because the audience, maybe a lot of people tuning in haven't been following the online Eastern Orthodox scene maybe as long as we have. We're old here. We're old. So I want to announce one thing, and I said it backstage, and I was totally blown away when the debate occurred, and Erick ended up debating Ubie, who ended up being Denny. Many years back in the old Reason and Theology days, Erick knew all along who Ubie was. Erick knew who it was. And I mean, I was blown away that when the debate started, I caught it late. Elijah sent me a message, and Elijah's like, he was right all along. He always knew. Sure enough, from the very beginning, Erick, you always knew who Ubie was. I guess you had previous engagements with him before. How did you know who it was all along, Erick? Can you tell people that to begin with?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was with just by reading a couple of paragraphs into his commencement article, I could detect that it was Denny Selin, because Denny and I went back for a while debating the papacy on different groups. I think there was one group, it was the Catholics and Orthodox in Dialogue on Facebook group. And then I got into a lot of debates with a deacon. I think he's still a deacon, or he might have been ordained as a presbyter. Joseph Swayden. Him, Swayden, Denny, and a couple of other guys would basically team up, against what I had to say. And they ended up creating a Facebook group called the War Room, the Orthodox War Room. And, traditional, what they meant was that's where they huddled to develop strategies and things like that. It was just a play on, that happened. And then Denny had a particular argument that he liked to use that I never really heard from other people, which was that one of the choice words to describe papal authority in the first millennium was the word auctoritas. Auctoritas, which is sharply distinguished from potestas, which means like a ruling power able to command and enforce. And so he championed that argument, and I didn't see that argument being echoed by anybody else.
Mhm.
So when Ubie Petrus started writing, and he used the auctoritas versus potestas argument, I thought this is either somebody who was really influenced by Denny, or it's Denny himself.
Yeah.
And my hunch was that it was Denny. There were some people who were successful in making me question whether it was Denny or not,
Mhm.
but I always kind of had that view that it was. Years later, I'd sort of jettisoned the idea. I just said,
Yeah.
you know what? I don't know who it is. So it was sort of a huge, it was a surprise, but also a very settling confirmation when he opened up in the debate and said who he was, Denny Sellon. Yeah.
Now, did you know when he arrived at the at Frad's studio, or it wasn't until he began talking?
It wasn't until he began talking,
Okay.
because when Denny had his Facebook profile before, he had two
Yeah.
pictures of himself.
Right.
It was just two pictures, and you couldn't really tell, although I knew he was an electrician.
Mhm.
But when I saw him come into the studio at Frad's studio up in Ohio, it didn't immediately hit me. Didn't immediately hit me. When he said hello, I recognized the voice. It was a lower tone. It was a higher pitch voice, but the same sort of pitch and melody that he has to his talk.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that there's some sort of maybe microphone he used in the past sort of changed it, made it deeper or something. But I
Yeah.
could tell it was the same guy who's been talking. Then when he sat down before we went live, I said, "Do I know you? Like, have you visited my parish, or I may have seen you, and I may have seen you, and you know who I am." He goes, "Just wait, just wait."
You
and
knew
then
all along.
and then then when he introduced himself, it was like, Denny. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's many times I've told a lot of people that I thought it was Denny. So.
Yeah. I went to our old ancient reason and theology group back when we were all part of R&T, and I found a message you sent to the group, and I took a screenshot of it. You were talking to Elijah and myself, and you said that you were going back and forth with Ubie, and you said, "Look, guys, the exact script Ubie is using is, almost word for word from Denny." I mean, when I read that, I'm like, man, the guy didn't even cover it up well.
Yeah. So I know that when he started the blog Ubie Petrus, it was a collaborative effort, at least between him and a British man, young man. His name is Lewis Reweb.
Yes, I remember. I know Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I knew Ubie and him were some sort of teamwork. Lewis I knew from like a couple of years before, because he was looking into Catholicism, perhaps trying to find reasons to convert. So he would send me messages, asking, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" And I tried to lead him in whatever direction I thought was best, but I didn't hear from him again for a long time. So it turned out he converted to Eastern Orthodoxy.
Yeah. I do want to say one thing that perhaps the audience may not know, and I want to do it because he doesn't get enough credit. But I know that Elijah really helped you prep for this debate, and I really want to emphasize that is one of the main reasons why in my channel I tell people they got to check out. Well, I always promote my brother Subdeacon Daniel, and I promote Elijah all the time. I think they both have incredible work, and there's a reason why when I debated many months ago, we debated together, 2-on-2 debate, the Immaculate Conception. The reason why I chose Elijah was very, very clear. I think Elijah is fantastic. I don't think he's good. I think he's fantastic. He's one of the very best, but he's not only one of the very best there in that field. As Eric knows, that's his bread and butter, the Immaculate Conception. When you've got guys like Father Coppes reaching out to Elijah with quotes like he's done in the past and keeping in touch with Elijah, that tells you Elijah's pretty good. And Eric, maybe you could talk a little bit about the role that Elijah had in helping you prep for this.
Yeah, well, Elijah and I go back a long time, and he originally sort of had this angle on Vatican I and the papacy that a lot of people don't like to talk about. And the roots of that go even further back. Some of the older fellows might know from the Forum days, a gentleman by the name of Marduk. I think Marduk. Well, he if you search him, he kind of he fleshes out a misunderstanding that a lot of people have, especially Catholics, and so Elijah, over the years has always been this counterbalance, and he, when Ubie Petrus made his videos, I didn't respond because number one, I wrote like a 60-page article against Ubie's first article.
Yeah.
And I thought I did the job.
Yep.
So nobody was seeing that though. And that's fine, but I just didn't want to expend any more effort. So I didn't even respond to the videos, and I didn't even listen to them all the way. As Elijah knows, it wasn't until before like towards the end of the debate that I started listening to these things. The voice guy that they hired was so annoying. I couldn't take the voice.
It was terrible.
Yeah, and then when he would say and Mr. Ybarra, due to his lack in this and due to his inability to do this and that, it's kind of hard to like get through that,
Yep.
But Elijah, not being the focus of the attack, he listened to these things and he developed a response to Ubie. So that's why, I went to him for basically to help me train for this,
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, we were having sparring sessions, Eric and I don't know how many, we did a few of them. But Eric is a very humble guy, and he gives more credit than is deserved. So I don't want you guys to think that these arguments that Eric came up with in the debate was like 100% Elijah Yasi. It was a heavy majority Erick Ybarra. We were just having a sparring, and I kind of, was directing one way or another and kind of refining and fine tuning some arguments with Eric together. So Eric doesn't like to take credit for the good job that he did. But that was the best debate you had.
A lot of that stuff was just the things that I had thought in response to our exchanges. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, we have a lot of exchange. I mean, we've been talking for what 10 years now, almost.
Yeah.
So yeah, we know each other's arguments very well, and I think we've fine-tuned each other's arguments. I mean, at least you've helped me. I mean, you wrote a whole book on this topic, and it's one of the best books I've read on the topic. So
yeah, likewise.
Now, Subdeacon clearly has no dog in this fight at all. But Subdeacon, what are your particular thoughts on the debate and on the presentation that Elijah's done and that Eric has done in terms of course, the way the debate is framed? I don't remember the exact parameters of the centuries, but very clearly we're dealing with the views of which group of Chalcedonians are correct, basically. What are your thoughts, Subdeacon? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead, brother.
Well, I've been on the record for years saying that I think even my very, very first online stream ever was on RNT with Michael and Craig. It was us three.
Wow.
Yeah. And at that time, I said, to accept Chalcedon is to accept the papacy.
Yeah.
And that has always been my view until today. I had Eric on the Lions Den maybe a year or so ago. We were talking about this, and not just Chalcedon, but the whole the whole controversy, like the sixth century stuff and after. And you guys know, like I have Craig on my channel, I go on his channel, so
Yeah.
like he knows that's what my view is. Like this is all this is what I believe. I believe if you accept this synod, you're accepting the Roman papacy.
Yep.
So you mean to tell me that this whole time I'm trying to convince you of the papacy, all I got to do is convince you of that?
And
almost there, bro.
And Subdeacon has done a show with me and with Eastern Catholic scholar Dr. Goff, and you've said it there on the air as well. We did a show on Chalcedon. You've said it multiple times over. So I do want to echo that. You have said that multiple times over. I do want to point out one other thing as well. Eric, I think you did an incredible job. I think you did a great job. Yeah, you did a fantastic job. And coming from myself, who is a debate junkie, I mean, you guys know that I'm a debate junkie. I'm very meticulous in listening to debates. And if I think somebody did okay, I'll be like, oh, okay, they did okay. And I won't bring it up. If I think that somebody did very well, I'm going to be quite vocal about that. And I think you did a fantastic job. Your defense of the Catholic position was fantastic. You did a great job, brother. And I want to give you a tip of the hat. In my opinion, I think that was your best debating performance that you have ever had.
Yes.
Congratulations, sir, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do agree that was probably my best performance because the last debate I had was, I think, with Father Patrick, John Ramsey.
Yeah.
And the whole internet said I lost, so I take it as a loss. Although we did have a part 2, which is never viewed. It's got like
it's on RNT. I know that.
It's on RNT. Yeah.
Yep.
We had a part 2, and some people thought I had the edge on that. I don't know. Look, it invited people to look deeper into the sources, and that's really what I like to do. But what I did in the debate with Father Patrick was I had my foot on the brakes a lot. And I didn't really speak my mind. I wasn't trying to, I wasn't accommodating to the audience. I wasn't really engaged. I didn't really have the skill for debate. Didn't train myself. This time around, I started looking into the how-tos a little bit. So that's why I think I improved. Yeah.
Yes. And if I can say something, I kind of want to summarize, if you guys don't mind.
Please do.
For the audience, the historical context of the debate and how it led up to all this, right? If you guys don't mind, is that okay?
Please do, brother.
So I don't know if you guys are aware, Ubie came into the scene like, I don't know, was it 5 years ago? Somewhere around there, 5-6 years ago.
2018, I think, or 19.
Oh, it was 18. Wow, time flies. Okay, so 6 years ago, pretty much, right? Almost 7 years ago. And he came out just calling out Erick Ybarra, right? Trying to get him to debate, blah, blah, blah. And, he was anonymous. So Erick didn't really want anything to do with Ubie because he was associated with some folks that Erick is not a fan of. We'll leave it there.
Can I briefly make only one comment? To add to that, you're 100% correct. But I want the audience to realize not only that, but originally Ubie was asking for maniacal payments to even appear on RNT. It was
that's
silly.
right. William's right.
Stupidity. It was stupid.
William's right. I'm sorry to pause you, Elijah, but
that's okay.
We originally invited him on Reasoning Theology a bunch of times. But, he said, I prefer articles. That's how it was at the start. I prefer articles, which I respected that, never harped on him for that. But later on, he said he did make that one statement where it's like, if you pay me a certain amount, I'll come on. But yeah, once he made that stream, he's planning to make a stream with Jay Dyer. I thought to myself, I don't know about this. I knew he knew a lot about history as well. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have as much interest now that he's gone into this, into the Dyer crowd,
Right.
Yeah. So, all that happened. But eventually, Erick is like, I'm not interested in debating you, but I think you were if you revealed himself, right? If you reveal who you are, then we can talk about it.
Yeah, that would definitely like pique the interest more, right?
Right.
Because you're speaking to a human being,
Right.
that's really there, that's got skin in the game and all that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that's where I was, right? And he didn't reveal. Now I'm willing to, if he wants to do a one-on-one, I have no problem doing that, because that was my condition. So fast forward to now, like, a few months ago, Matt Fradd contacts Eric and he says, would you like to debate an Eastern Orthodox on the papacy? I don't know if it was Eastern Orthodox specifically or just on the papacy. And Eric, went out hunting for an opponent, and he wasn't able to find anyone. But then Ubie finds out that Eric is requesting for an opponent on Pines with Aquinas, Matt Fradd's channel, and he says, why didn't you ask me? And as if Eric knew that he would reveal himself if he asked him, because for like 6-7 years he's been saying no to that. And then, eventually they hashed it out and they said, okay, they set up a date and all that stuff. What I want to tell folks is Ubie has been calling Eric out all these years. Everyone's saying Ubie's going to annihilate Eric and all that, debate talk. I'm going to destroy this and kill shot that. It's going to be a massacre, right? And Eric never responded to these kinds of remarks. And I think what that did is that put a lot of pressure on Ubie, not on Eric. Eric went in there, I'm expected to lose. Everyone thinks I'm going to lose. Not that he had that mentality, but the perception is Eric is going to get annihilated by this so-called, what seemed to be giving the perception that he was some sort of scholar. I mean, that's the kind of perception that I got from him. He fooled me. I thought he was some sort of like academic scholar in the field of church history or what have you, right? And then I think Ubie put a lot of pressure on himself, or a lot of people put pressure on him. So when you watch the debate, you can see how uncomfortable he is debating Eric, where it was supposed to be the other way around. So all these years, this guy was supposed to come and just end Eric's apologetic career, and he shoots himself in the foot. Well, Eric had a lot of help with that, but I just kind of want to preface that, and because of all these years, hearing all the noise, and hopefully that kind of quiets. And you can see a lot of folks who were saying that, they kind of backpedaled a little bit. Now there were some folks who are delusional, and he said Ubie Petrus won the debate because of this kill shot, and we'll talk about that kill shot as we go into this. But yeah,
no, there's no way, and I knew all along that Ubie was not any kind of academic. No, I was able to pick that up in his debate that he had with Swan. It was in the papacy a few years back. When I heard Ubie bring up, when they were going back and forth dialoguing, that he had been Googling this and Googling that, just hearing them talk back and forth, I knew right away, this guy is not an academic. This guy does not know the languages, because if this guy's an academic, he has access to the databases. He's going to be using the Thesaurus Lingua Grece. He's going to be utilizing Latin databases. The guy did none of the sort. In fact, the guy didn't even know how to do that. That to me right away set off alarm bells and said the guy doesn't know how to do real research at all. And to this day, it's been proven Eric totally refuted him. It was not even close. People that think that maybe that Ubie did well, they're probably very young. They probably have very little experience debating. And I can tell you right now, Eric did a fantastic job there. But you guys were talking about that kill shot. I'd love to revisit that later. But before we do that, Subdeacon, do you have any thoughts, anything to add?
I just want to, since we're giving context, background to this, I want to just give it to anyone who doesn't follow like kind of the online apologetic personalities, or doesn't know if anyone's watching. So Eric, Elijah William, a Roman Catholic. Eric was in the debate with Ubie. Ubie is this guy named Denny, who is Eastern Orthodox, as we call the Maroon. So this has been it was building up for years, and it was finally it was possible. It happened, and in my opinion, I don't think Ubie won. So I didn't have interaction with him before like you guys did. I think there was a few messages, correspondence of like some Syriac resources, very 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 little anything. But besides that, that's the context. So that's what everyone's talking about. That's the buildup.
But you have had extensive interactions with the diaries. Am
Absolutely.
I correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta you know when they all block you, then you're doing something.
Yep. You're doing something right when they all block you. Eric, any particular thoughts?
When I was preparing to meet Ubie Petrus at the studio in Ohio, I knew we had a history, but the way I looked at it was these anonymous accounts online. It's really like an invisibility cloak, where nobody knows you, and so it's really hard to be held accountable. But and that we all have that sense of security. I mean, you see it on the road, like if somebody cuts you off or flicks you off.
Yeah.
A girl who's 90 pounds, soaking wet, 5'2", flicks you off and cuts you off on the road. The engine makes it sound like she's got some some sort of dominance.
Yeah.
But the fact is, we'll never see each other, right? So there's this invisibility cloak, and so that's, I think, anonymous accounts. And even if I had an anonymous account, it's just human nature to sort of not be the same as we are in person, right? So I'm not trying to describe Ubie there with the girls. So just to make it clear,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say that when you're anonymous, it's harder to really get to know anybody both ways.
Right. Yeah.
But when we first met over in Ohio, everything was cordial. He was respectful to me. When I found out that he's an electrician, that actually made me have more respect for him, because I like Elijah. When I started to doubt who it was, I didn't know if it was Denny or not. I also thought it might have been like a linguist, some guy who is a scholar, knows German, Latin, and there was something about how in his job he had to, there was just a number of hints that he was well read. So I thought, like, when I'm working in blue collar preparing for this debate, I was like, well, Ubie's probably sitting at his desk in, floor 3 in some, university. But when he said, no, he too is an electrician, that actually, like, this guy's actually working, working out there. I thought it was maybe the beginning of a better relationship. That's the way I kind of want to see it, because it was face to face. He's a human. He has an eternal soul. I'm a human. I have an eternal soul.
Yeah.
He obviously wants to convince me of the truth. He wants to support his Orthodox community. I understand that. But I think hopefully like our relationship will change as a result of this, and I'm sure we'll have more interactions in the future.
I think it was like that for you even before you met him. Just knowing you as a person. I don't think you ever wanted this kind of internet.
Oh yeah, no, I knew that it would be probably better to meet him. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
And to really echo that point, maybe the audience don't know, we brought it up briefly. Hopefully, God willing, there will be more fruitful dialogue between you and him. We do have plans, and God willing, we'll announce that soon, to have a 3-on-3 debate. It'll be myself, the brother Elijah, Eric, and we will be debating Ubie, Jay Dyer, and apparently a third person of theirs that we don't know who that is yet. But and hopefully that is a fruitful dialogue. It'll be moderated by our brother Sam, and he'll be fair. I know that for a fact. He's a near and dear friend of mine. It'll be a fairly moderated. So we're excited about that, and we're excited for future dialogues. And I think that really, Eric, after that debate of yours, even though I think that you clearly won. I thought it was a cordial discussion. Thought it was a cordial debate. I don't know how you all ended. I imagine you all ended on good terms with a handshake or a hug. I can only hope.
Yeah. When we took a little stroll through Steubenville, and then he had to go. Yeah, he was staying a little bit of a distance away because the Orthodox church that he wanted to visit when he was in Pennsylvania was a little farther away. Steubenville is close to the border there between Penn State and Ohio. So yeah. So I mean, I thought we ended on good terms.
Good.
Yeah. So his personality, he's very austere. You could tell he's very he's a critical thinker. Definitely. His personality is the kind that you would see in kind of like somebody who thinks something very carefully before they speak, on things that really matter. So he had some complaints during the debate about the noise, and there was a parade outside. But I think that his personality is I don't know if he laughed. I can't remember if he laughed or not. I think he did. I think he did a couple times, but
yeah, he did.
He's a very serious guy.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Elijah. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Real quick, I just wanted to say that I think the Oriental Orthodox are the ones that put that parade together at the time.
I don't doubt it at all. But that in context, I'm looking in the chat every now and then. A lot of people are asking why those particular dates, Erick? Did any of you all sit down and you all said, okay, we're going to deal with this is going to be the parameters, these centuries, we're going to deal with that? Who came up with that?
Right. So originally, I had proposed just a general first millennium debate, but then Denny had said that everybody, every time this subject happens, it's this general 1,000-year thing, and so he preferred to do something more specific, and. But I don't know. I think it might lose interest. If we made it so specific, like the dispute between Agapetus and Patriarch Anthimus,
right?
Who's going to tune into that? I mean, maybe I know Subdeacon Daniel would tune into that,
right?
Right. We'll have one viewer.
Our friend Dioscoros would tune in.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
There you go.
But so I said, well, okay, so let's meet in the middle. Let's do 5th and 6th centuries, and I'm the one who proposed that because I thought that there's obviously a lot of meat in the 5th century.
Oh yeah,
but I also, and Elijah can testify to this, I kind of wanted to challenge myself with the whole Vigilius thing because for years now I've been saying that the Vigilius thing is really hard. I mean, I think Subdeacon Daniel, William, I've been candid in saying that this is a challenging issue. So I thought, here maybe this is an opportunity for me to really get slammed up against the wall and see how a Catholic can do.
Not at all.
And so that's why I chose 5th and 6th century, and he agreed. So
yeah. I mean, that was very gutsy because I don't know a lot of Catholics who would want to debate Vigilius with anyone. Ubie is no slouch when it comes to the history. He knows his history, and I don't think he did a good job with drilling that at all because he didn't really go into the Vigilius. He asked, if I remember correctly, one Vigilius question that had nothing to do with what we had prepared for, right?
Yeah, I really did think to add to that, and you can elaborate, Elijah or Erick. I really, really expected a lot of Vigilius. I really did. And to be fair, I think Erick still would have done fantastic. I still do. But I was surprised at how little of Vigilius. Do you have any thoughts on that, Elijah or Erick, as to why there was so little of Vigilius that was brought up?
I think he was just trying to bring out some unique arguments, and like Erick was saying, he's a critical thinker, so he kind of wants to do something different. something unique, is what it seemed like to me. A lot of the stuff was the same arguments that he was making in his articles and his videos, but the whole always doesn't always mean always.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if he had said that before in his videos or articles. I mean, at least not that I remember. I could be wrong. But the Vigilius question he asked, and maybe we can get into this because that was the supposed kill shot, right? That ended Erick Ybarra. That question, you just 2 minutes, literally. I think it was 60 seconds. 60 seconds is probably what it was. So ignore the 3-hour debate. Just focus on the 60-second, and I guess that's what a kill shot is, because you're focusing on somebody's, and just.
It was on PBS 60 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Eric, maybe you could reinstate the question that was asked. But what folks thought that Ubie was asking was the typical Vigilius case where Catholicism does need to answer those questions, or that's our Achilles in the papacy when it comes to the first millennium, right? We admit that. We say that all the time. I think there are answers, and sometimes people are not convinced of the answers, but there are answers. And that's what people thought that Ubie was asking Erick, is in that context. And then Erick basically said, I've never, I don't want to butcher your words, so maybe you could say what you said.
Yeah,
and then explain
right.
what your answer would be. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So everybody, it seems like a lot of people anyway, thought that this is the Vigilius, this is the Rubik's Cube for Catholicism on what to do with Vigilius and the Council of Constantinople 553. But that's actually not what the question was about.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when Denny asked that question, it wasn't something I really spent a lot of time even researching, because I didn't think it would be something to bring up from an Orthodox side against a Catholic side, because I didn't see a lot of energy there to garner support for the Eastern contention, because number one, Vigilius is commemorated in blessed memory by the Sixth Ecumenical Council.
Mm-hmm.
William, Father Capus, and Caps, and was it Divine Mercy?
Right.
Apologize. Yep. You guys did a whole video going over the. I want to say it's the 13th or session of 681, where they brought up Vigilius, and
you're correct.
They refer to him as a saint, and Photius of Constantinople in his Mystagogy on the Holy Spirit, and in his famous letter to, oh boy, the name escapes me, the king of the Bulgars. Boy, I can't remember his name. But the Khan, I can't remember, man. Boris, I don't know. Anyway, the king of the Bulgars, he wrote in reference to Vigilius as the president of the. He wasn't there at the council, but he ratified the Council of 553. So, in other words, Vigilius was not remembered as an enemy of anybody. He was remembered as a saint in Byzantium. So was Pope Silverius. Pope Silverius is commemorated as a saint. I know for a fact he's commemorated as a saint in the Latin Church.
That's right.
And so there are some accounts as to how Silverius came out of office, so quote unquote, and then how Vigilius took his place. And so the question that Denny had was, well, and I didn't even listen to it again, so I'm going off of a distant memory here. I think what his question is, well, Pope Vigilius judged Pope Silverius and took him out of office so that Vigilius could come into office. That, or the state removed Silverius, making room for Vigilius. But I mean, what you have there is you have the state taking uncanonical measures to maneuver church offices. And when you don't have a fresh trial, I mean, even in that situation with Pope Silverius, Emperor Justinian even thought that it was uncanonical of the original deposition of, quote unquote, deposition of Silverius. I don't want to get too carried away with the whole story, but the short story is that Pope Silverius was basically accused of being a traitor towards Rome, New Rome, and the Roman Empire by basically being lax towards the Goths who were seeking to invade the Italian peninsula, especially Rome, and he was accused of sort of letting them into the gates. And so then you've got one of Justinian's generals, Belisarius, and his wife Antonina, who accused Silverius of treason and basically depose him. and then he's exiled to a distant place, and somehow word gets to Justinian, hey, the Pope of the Universal Church has been judged and exiled. Like, what in the world's going on here? And Justinian was like, what is going on here? And so he orders Silverius to come back to Rome to be judged fairly on what grounds what was there for this accusation. He was never given a trial. He literally was never given a trial.
Right.
But when he went back to Rome by the order of Justinian, we have these accounts that say that Belisarius basically delivered him into the hands of Vigilius, and Vigilius did not have a fair trial at all, but just exiled him again to a little island 20 miles away off the coast of Italy, where he died of hunger, according to one account. Another account says that Belisarius's wife, Antonina, had a servant who murdered him. There's these conflicting stories by some of them are contemporary, others are not contemporary to the situation, and they're conflicting. Even Richard Price in his, if you read the introduction to the Council of Constantinople 553, he accepts the basic tale of how Silverius was, basically exiled forcefully.
Yeah.
But he also notes how some of the chroniclers had an axe to grind. One of them was a Carthaginian. His name was Liberatus of Carthage. He was writing in the 550s, and he had an axe to grind against Vigilius because Vigilius was condemning the 3 chapters. And in North Africa at this time, if you condemned the 3 chapters, you were a heretic.
You condemned Chalcedon.
Yeah, you condemned.
Yeah.
So Liberatus was saying that Vigilius is basically a monophysite undercover, or a miaphysite, as we would say today. For him, he thought that's the Africans thought that the miaphysites were just basically, that they were destroying the Christological doctrine, right? So Liberatus, for him, Vigilius is an absolute heretic through and through.
Yeah.
So how could we, as Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox, trust Liberatus? Because for us, the 6th Ecumenical Council says Vigilius is of blessed memory, right? Yeah. Now we could say, oh, well, he repented, but we don't have a trace of that repentance. We don't have a trace of that repentance at all. And to even so, to recant something doesn't mean you become a saint,
Right.
So then we have Procopius is another contemporary.
Procopius,
in his Secret History, he writes touches on Silverius and Vigilius, and but he's a contemporary because he is basically like a legal assistant to Belisarius. And Procopius speaks a little bit better of Vigilius than the other ones. The Liber Pontificalis has a few sources that it draws from that puts Vigilius in a bad light. So the question is the question really is not an Orthodox versus Catholic question.
Right.
It's if anything, the Protestants can use this as a way to say, hey, Vigilius was a heretic, therefore the Council of Constantinople 553 is invalid.
Yeah,
That's right.
Because you had a false bishop,
right.
of Rome, and then so I didn't really see it as a question to really get to wrestle with an Orthodox person about, because I didn't see it as, so I'm actually still studying the issue, because I still don't have a satisfactory account. I'd like to write an article on it, to really talk about why this is not an anti-Catholic from an Orthodox perspective. If anything, it would be like a Protestant or an atheist or then I could understand them trying to get something from this, because an Orthodox person can't say, well, Pope Silverius's deposition was canonical. That option is not there for an Orthodox.
Right.
Or, well, Pope Vigilius's election was invalid. Well, that option is not there for the Orthodox.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in short, it seems like a very muddy piece of history that I didn't think had a lot of relevance to the debate.
Yeah, it was irrelevant. So now I just want to summarize this for the folks. So debate happens. They focus on that 60 seconds. They misunderstand the question. And they say from that very question that Erick didn't have an answer to, that's where Ubie won the debate. So they're basically admitting that Ubie lost the debate because they got nothing else besides that, so to speak, kill shot. Because if that kill shot is not really a kill shot, it's a misunderstanding of something that they thought it was, but it wasn't. They had nothing else to point to say, here's where Ubie Petrus won the debate. Now, it's not about winning or losing or anything like that, but it is for these guys that are online. And sometimes it's okay to judge a debate, say this guy won or that guy won. But just to have an obsession over that, it's just
healthy.
It becomes childish. Yeah.
Erick, so from the Oriental Orthodox side, you brought up the whole 553, invalidity, whatever. And the way we look at it is we don't really understand fully why 553 stayed within the Roman Catholic canonical system, over like in the like reception. So versus say 536 or Lateran or whatever, 649. So 553 for the Orientals, like for us, it's like why does Rome still hold to that after all the stuff that happened controversially? So that's an interesting point that you brought up. The Protestants, we think similar to what you're saying there.
Yeah, because go on, please.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that in the West, the Council of Constantinople 553 was largely ignored and rejected. And we touched on this in the debate, because I was expecting for Denny to say, well, what about all these Italians and Africans and all these other people who didn't accept the Council of 553? We touched on that, but the resistance that the West had to that council could be used by somebody to say, hey, this council wasn't really received.
And canonized saints for you guys, like Isidore Seville.
And
precisely.
Then Saint Columba of Ireland.
That's right.
Who's venerated by the Orthodox too.
Yeah,
and both of them are Isidore and
Isidore is as well. You're right.
Right. So it is a tough, when popes Pelagius the First, Pelagius the Second, and Gregory the First had to contend for that council, they did it in very humble terms. They're like, look, it was just a matter of figuring out what names should be condemned, and there was no doctrine or anything. Like they were very apologetic about it. And when it came to the first 4 councils up to Chalcedon, they were like, no, those are the councils. This other one that happened with Vigilius, yeah, we have to accept it, but don't worry, it didn't really introduce anything. So it's like we don't even know how much of the council was accepted by Rome.
Got it.
So it's one of those. There's a lot of missing links.
I don't know if Elijah remembers this. One time he and I were talking, and we were trying to figure out like what in 553 could be applicable to something official that Rome has pushed forward. And we were thinking maybe it was like the condemnation of Origenism or something like that. But I wanted to ask you, Eric, because I don't, maybe you guys did address this in the debate. I can't remember at the moment. Did you guys talk about Hormistus, the formula of Hormistus?
We did. Yes, we did. Yeah. And I think Denny's position was that it was more or less like a nothing burger because, and he to be fair to him, there are some Catholic scholars who support what he was saying. So that one recent book that was published by the CUAP press, Pauline Allen and Bronwyn Neal.
Yeah,
called Conflict.
Yeah,
Conflict and Negotiation. Well, they in the introduction they talk about how the popes would expand rhetoric. They would use rhetoric to sort of beef up their authority to command, the East. And so I don't know if Denny was like alluding to that when he said that it's all rhetoric. That's what he was saying, that the formula of Hormisdas is just all rhetorical stuff. But
I don't even know what that means. Like, it was imperial policy.
I think I reached out to you like a month or so before the debate because I tried to get in touch with who's this I can't ever pronounce his last name, Volker Menz or Menzi.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Menzi. Yeah,
Volker Menzi. So he's like one of the go-to guys in the English-speaking world. Like the Syriac Orthodox. When they want like an English author, they frequently cite him and a couple other guys that have written a lot of like academic journals and stuff like this. But Menz, when I read his book, he and Ubie Denny recommended his book on his recommended reading site, Justinian and the Making of the Syriac Orthodox Church. When you read that book, Menzi does not take the view that the formula was just like a rhetorical invitation or something like this.
Not. Yeah, he does.
Right. He took it as like this is immediate jurisdiction. He uses the phrase immediate jurisdiction of the Pope. And not a lot of people know this, but he wrote a second book, which it just so happens that when I learned about this other book, Ehab sent me your recommendation to get the book of John of Tella on John of Tella, who was another Miaphysite from non-Chalcedonian from that era. And he wrote a whole book on the Pauline configuration of the church to sort of offset the whole libellus. So the non-Chalcedonians, they looked at the libellus as a warhammer. They didn't see it as a
rhetoric.
Yeah,
Byzantine flattery.
Rhetoric.
John of Tella's statement, the quote that Menzi gives from John of Tella, if you read it, it shakes you about the
right. So I mean, whether you're like this is what I like to tell some folks in that debate. I didn't need to be a Roman Catholic. I didn't need to be. I could have just been an atheist watching the political scene,
right,
in 516, 17, 18. And nobody there would have told you that Rome's policy was that, hey, we really need to get synodal, and we really need to, cast, we need to think in terms of majority opinion, and this is that. So, I mean, whether I'm doing a service to myself as a Catholic, or if I'm doing a disservice to myself as a Catholic, the scholarship on this point is replete that Rome had a heavy hand, in some ways disgustingly, because basically Rome was asking many of the Eastern churches to empty out a lot of names that these people commemorated in fellowship. So from trying to speak from an unbiased point of view, a lot of people would have seen it as aggressive, very aggressive movement on the part of Justinian and the Pope, of course, but definitely imperial policy. And I know sometimes Ubie had said that, well, there was a whole bunch of people who signed their own libelli.
Mhm.
But the one of the things we didn't really touch is that none of those other libelli were like somehow supposed to be like their own manifestos.
Right.
And as Subdeacon knows, and as Elijah knows, and William knows, the libellus of Hormisdas didn't it wasn't buried. It resurfaced again and again, and especially in 535, 536.
Yep.
Pope Agapetus came to Constantinople, and he required the emperor and the patriarch of Constantinople to sign a fresh version of the formula. And Justinian, when he signed it, he added that this is going to be the policy everywhere going forward for all archbishops, all metropolitans, and all of the civil magistrates in the empire.
Eric, to add a point to that, 536, which actually was the first Fifth Ecumenical Council. At 536, because of what happened with Antimus when he became Oriental Orthodox, the switch happened. Agapetus was in town and stopped everything. Right, he surprised everyone. It's like a WWE scene where Stone Cold's music kind of goes off and everybody's shocked. They didn't know he was in town.
Right.
First time a pope presides at a council in the East. So
You're correct.
And then, but going forward after those signatures that you're talking about, starting with, I think, Mina of Constantinople and after, Constantinople had to submit their pick for the patriarchate every time to Rome for Rome to approve it.
Yes, yeah, because that's why Minas was the one that qualified, because Agapetus at first was like he kind of stuck his chest out to the emperor. He's like, "What? You invited me as a friend, and now I come to see Constantius II, which was the persecuting emperor to Athanasius." So he kind of forced Justinian to bend his will to what the Pope was saying.
There's one thing I like to bring up, brothers, and you hear it brought up very often. I'd love to get everybody's thoughts here. It is, and it came up during this debate. You'll hear it very often that the so-called papal claims that you find in these councils, in the fathers as well, they will chalk it up to flattery kind of language. Very often you find this one of the most popular talking points among Eastern Orthodox online individuals. In my opinion, as I've pointed out very often, and even Subdeacon has pointed out, in fact, Subdeacon famously mentioned when we were on with Dr. Goff that one of the main issues for Eastern Orthodoxy is that the Greek Chalcedonian Episcopate embraced the papacy. That to me is a problem on their end. I don't think that the argument that all of this is just mere flattery kind of language, I don't find it convincing at all. I don't think the historical record shows that at all. And I think that you show that that really isn't the case. But Eric, can you maybe talk about that a lot? Do you hear that brought up very often in attempts to kind of, wave away the papal claims? Do you hear that brought up often?
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, okay, I want to be clear. I don't think it's a legitimate counterpoint. I don't think it's a good rebuttal or refutation or anything like that. But to be fair, there is, obviously, we all know that there is use of rhetorical, hyperbolic language, but in many cases, it's because they really believe what they're saying.
Yes.
They really believe. Like, that's why I brought up how some of the Byzantine statements about the Virgin Mary or the church or the saints, when they talked about Saint John Chrysostom or some of the other saints of the past, they would use sometimes hyperbolic language, but it's because they believed it corresponded with what they were saying. And the reason why it doesn't work with Leo the Great, Chalcedon, and I think Subdeacon will appreciate this point, is Chalcedon. A lot of Orthodox don't understand how much of a problem Chalcedon was. And because they don't understand how much of a problem it created in the Christian world, they often just say, "Oh, well, all the patriarchs accepted it's one of the ecumenical councils." But after Chalcedon, that council received a lot of resistance. I mean, people were passionately against it in the monasteries, and theologians in the East were against it. And eventually, Chalcedon became like bad news everywhere almost. And so I kind of compare it to like Donald Trump when he came into office in 2016. And this Subdeacon might not appreciate this. This is just a comparison to get the point across. Okay. But Donald Trump came into office 2016, 2020. It was a dramatic loss, right? Biden got into office. The Democrats were in power. And then they were trying to basically condemn him, indict him, and all that. And then all of a sudden in 2024, Donald Trump rises to the top. Everybody's talking about how great Donald Trump is. Well, that's kind of how the issue went with Chalcedon. Chalcedon happened. Everybody was happy. Then, boom, it dropped. And then all of a sudden, in the beginning of the 500s, you got all these people saying, no, Chalcedon again. And it was through the instrumentality of the papal rationale. Like, oh no, this was a council ratified by Peter's successor. There's protective promises given to Peter and his successors. That's why you can't get rid of this council. Mm-hmm. And that's how the division in the East happened. Because otherwise, and this is a theory that I've heard from one of my mentors, had Emperor Anastasius I got one of his nephews, because he was childless, he didn't have an heir to his family. If Anastasius I, that was the predecessor to Justin, okay? If Anastasius I had one of his nephews become the emperor after him, we wouldn't be talking about 1054.
Right.
We would be talking about 484.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And there wouldn't be Eastern Chalcedonians, probably.
Right. So the only reason why you have a 1054 is because in 519, Pope Hormisdas' Libellus came and said, no, you have to accept Chalcedon because of this Petrine theory. Now, a lot of the Greeks who accepted Chalcedon, they didn't believe in that. They were just going along. I'm fully aware that they were not all on board with what Hormizdas said. But they cooperated with the policy, and that's why you had a return to Chalcedon in the East, and so really, in my opinion, the formula of Hormizdas, it's basically the kill shot from my perspective, because whatever you could say about Pope Leo, the tome, Chalcedon, they judged the tome, they put it in a corner, they were eyeing it, they were looking at it, they were doing this, they were doing that, whatever you want to say. In 519, everybody was singing a different tune.
Yeah.
About the tome, and it became the subject of miraculous hymnographic tradition. What Leo put the tome on the tomb of Peter, and Peter corrected a few things. There was all kinds of things that were coming out about the tome. So I think that right there, I don't even need to be a Roman Catholic. I don't even need to be a Christian to tell you that the formula of Hormizdas had this massive impact. And all the scholars that I've read on this, they all agree. Somebody asked me, but Eric, that doesn't make sense. How do Eastern Orthodox scholars agree with you? I said, well, a lot of Eastern Orthodox scholars today, they're not interested in converting Catholics
at all.
They're not ortho bros.
No,
they're not interested in converting people. So a lot of the time they just say what it is,
Yeah. And I one thing that I do hear very often is, first off, great point there in 519, and people definitely singing a different tune. Yet today we find, I find at least a lot of the ortho bro community not realizing that, maybe being quite ignorant to history. And very often I've seen a lot of the ortho bro community, for the sake of denying the papal claims that they very clearly agreed to in the councils where we're united, East and West, lowering the status of Pope Leo and, of course, of his tome, to the point of where I've heard people say, well, it isn't a matter of Pope Leo's tome. It's a matter of Leo's tome being acceptable according to the Christology of St. Cyril. And as a Catholic, we have no problem agreeing there. We don't now, of course, our Oriental Orthodox brothers and sisters who disagree, but as a Catholic, we're going to say, yeah, amen to that. We don't believe the Christology of St. Cyril and the Christology of Pope St. Leo the Great are that they differ. We don't. So with that in mind, I think a lot of the Ortho Bro community go that route to denigrate Pope St. Leo the Great, to denigrate the tome, because they fear that if they agree to the papal claims, the way their scholars show that they did at one point in history, that, hey, well, there's a problem there. And, maybe it leads to other issues with their theological paradigm that they're dealing with. What are your thoughts on that? I'll go with you, Eric, and then maybe Elijah and Subdeacon.
Yeah, I'll just have a brief comment. I think a lot of people, when they read the Council of Chalcedon, they don't realize how much of a state event it was.
Yes.
The imperial commissioners had an itinerary. They had instructions from the emperor. It wasn't the bishop's idea to get up and say, I think the tome is in accord with Cyril and Ephesus and Nicaea. That wasn't like their plan.
Right.
The imperial commissioner said, no, you will get up and say this.
Yeah.
Every one of you will. And if you don't, and if there's enough resistance, we'll close the council here and reset up in the West. Yeah. And a lot of people were like, oh, shoot, wow, we don't want to go over there. And I mean, even some of the bishops there who thought Leo was, the tome was a weak document. They kowtowed to what Emperor Marcion was saying. So yeah, I think that sometimes if you got to read the Acts of the Council,
yeah,
and read Price's book. I mean, Price has got excellent commentary through the whole thing. you know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Elijah, your particular thoughts, brother.
Forgive me, William. I actually forgot your question already.
In terms of, trying to revise the importance of Pope St. Leo's tome, you find a lot of the online ortho-bro community perhaps denigrating the importance of it and saying, well, it's not so much the tome of Leo, it's really just a Christology of St. Cyril that is front and center here, not really the tome of Leo. You find that very often in the ortho-bro community to kind of, I imagine, denigrate the importance of the papacy because it's threatening to their position.
So here's how I look at things when people talk like that, when they say, they're more focused on St. Cyril, Ephesus 1 than they are with Pope Leo and whatever he did. Number one, there's no issue as far as Catholicism and papal infallibility goes, even if someone was to say that. Number one, Ephesus 1 was ratified by Pope St. Celestine, right? So what St. Cyril wrote was something that was ratified by Pope Celestine in the Catholic point of view. So that had the infallibility attached to it in the sense of, ecumenical council and all that stuff. So that's there. And what Vatican I teaches is that the Pope is not to create new doctrines or dogmas, right? They're only supposed to declare what has always been taught. So if the Chalcedonian fathers are looking at St. Cyril, even if I were to grant all this Eastern Orthodox stuff, they're judging the Pope, they're judging him according to what St. Cyril wrote. They don't care about Pope Leo. He's not that important. Who's important here is St. Cyril. Even if I were to grant all that, which I don't necessarily do that, but let's just do that for the sake of the argument, that doesn't go against Vatican I because the Pope's dogma is supposed to be in line with the previous councils and teachings of the church, right? So there really isn't any issue there. And just briefly, I do want to touch up on your last question you asked about before we go to Subdeacon, if you don't mind. It'll take me a few seconds.
Yeah.
Your last question was about flattery. How do we
Right.
If the Eastern Orthodox apologists are just going to point flattery, okay, then there's nothing that we can show that's going to prove the papacy. At that point, then you're just going to keep saying flattery. So what do we have to do to prove the papacy? Like, how can you differentiate between flattery and reality or truth, right?
Vatican I is flattery.
Yeah, Vatican I is flattery, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Very, very flowery language there.
Yes. So you can't distinguish between, and I think this is something that Erick has said for a long time though, and it stuck with me, and he said this earlier, is there has to be truth behind the flowery and flattery language, or else they wouldn't have said it, or else it just sounds preposterous. Who is this Peter, successor of Peter guy who has this authority and they're talking this way? The head of the church who declares dogmas and is infallible. I mean, obviously, I'm kind of paraphrasing how what they say. They say it a lot more flattery way. But there's truth behind what they're saying. There has to be, or else it wouldn't make any sense for them to say anything like that. But those are my thoughts there on the last 2 points.
Subdeacon, any particular thoughts to add?
Yeah, I mean, to you guys, I'm sure you guys can guess. To me, the whole thing sounds completely ridiculous because I don't even think that Cyril and Leo agree with each other. So for them,
we know that.
Yeah, for them to say Leo is Cyril's Christology, and like to us, like if these people are insane, they need to go to a doctor. But the other point you mentioned, you said they don't care about history. They don't know the history, and it's because William, when I used to talk to them back when still like everything was on conversation level before it got heated later.
Yeah.
I used to tell them, guys, read the history. Go read your councils, read your own stuff. Like don't read anything from us. Go read your history. They would explicitly tell me we don't care about it. So they're concerned with the metaphysical arguments. They're not in the philosophy. They're not concerned with it. And I was talking to you guys yesterday about it on WhatsApp, about the whole thing with the revisionism. The evidence that they don't care about history is that they make claims that nobody, not even their own bishops, make these claims. Things like Isaac of Nineveh was them. Like Metropolitan Hilarion Alfeyev wrote a book about Isaac of Nineveh, showing how he was Church of the East. But we have to listen to these kids online. Like it's not acceptable to the intellectual mind.
Yeah, it's revisionism. Yeah, no, that's something. Just if you guys are not aware, Jay Dyer did a stream. I think it was yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. I was listening to it. I don't know why. Sometimes
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, there you go. You get entertainment out of it. And this was really entertaining because he was claiming that someone asked him, how can they say Saint Isaac of Nineveh or Saint Isaac of Syria, I think.
Syria.
Yeah.
Right.
How can he be a saint in the Eastern Orthodox Church if he wasn't in communion with the Eastern Orthodox? And he said, and he kind of shot himself in the foot with his claim, not just what Subdeacon said. He said that he was in communion with Eastern Orthodox at the time of his death. And I tweeted this, or X posted this. Wow. But that's not where he shot himself in the foot. Where he shot himself in the foot, he says it's impossible for us as Eastern Orthodox to have saints that died out of communion with the Eastern Orthodox. I brought this up with Subdeacon Daniel yesterday on private message. Me and him were going back and forth on this, and I asked him, were there any more that they believe are saints? And he said, yeah, there were a lot more. So it's not just this case that is problematic for them. Even if you were to say, okay, let's grant you this guy was Eastern Orthodox. And it's funny because I showed this screenshot to Eric. I like to talk to ChatGPT. He's really fun to talk to. So I said, Jay Dyer thinks, Saint Isaac of Syria was Eastern Orthodox. And then it said, yeah, he's wrong. ChatGPT said he's wrong. And I said, without sugarcoating it, how stupid is the argument that he made that he was between 1 and 10, and it said 8 or 9. So it was ChatGPT that said that. So that's how stupid the argument is, according to ChatGPT.
Just for the record, so people want to look up some of the names of those saints. Yeah. Besides Isaac, Simeon Stylites, Theodora, the empress. There is the Georgians actually venerate Peter the Iberian, who was the teacher of Severus of Antioch, and the rest of Eastern Orthodoxy condemn Peter the Iberian officially at an ecumenical council. I think Sophronius of Jerusalem's letter or something. And then there were those three names, those three saints from the Sinai Gaza area. I always forget their names. Isaiah Dorotheus and Barsanufius.
Yeah. So you got to deal with those. So if you're gonna make a case for Saint Isaac being Eastern Orthodox, okay, you can have that. Not deal with
I remember. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
I remember Denny, and I think when he was Ubie, said that Acacius or Akakius, however you want to pronounce it, he's venerated. Like there's a contingent of Orthodox that like to say that he's venerated.
Wow.
Because I think one of the stylites, Daniel, or I can't remember which stylite monk it was that mentions the blessed of blessed memory, Akakius. So there are some, and Meyendorff brings this up too, by the way. I'll try to post a picture of it up on social media, where Meyendorff refers to this small contingent within Byzantium that tried to restore Acacius to the diptychs.
Right.
Yeah, he's mentioned explicitly, commemorated in the Coptic liturgy every Sunday.
Yeah, no, he's the saint for you guys. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you Eastern Orthodox will acaciouly say that he's a saint. So.
Yeah. Now, for Erick and Elijah both, and Subdeacon, if you want to comment, one thing I have noticed very often from many of these online Orthodox apologists, is a massive well, let me be very clear. Also among Catholic, among Catholics, it's a massive misunderstanding of Vatican I. This is one thing I encounter so often. It's a bummer, in my opinion, a real bummer when I see the misunderstanding. And then, of course, Elijah just totally throws a heaping pile of dung right on my desk when he shows me the poll that he ran. I mean, you brothers, can you maybe talk about that? Do you think maybe the fact that if Catholics are poor at catechizing, then that Eastern Orthodox are going to have a tough time understanding what we even believe in terms of papal infallibility? You think that seems to be an issue in the modern day? Whoever wants, Erick or Elijah first.
Yeah, that's an Elijah question.
So I do want to preface this by first saying this. Erick went on Pints with Aquinas talking about Eastern Orthodoxy. You remember that? You were talking about the ecclesiology and
yeah.
And it wasn't focused on Eastern Orthodoxy. It's why be Catholic, right? It was something like that, or why not be Eastern Orthodox? Whatever it was, is you're talking about Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology. And then Ubie and Seraphim Hamilton and some other folks did a stream reviewing that and trying to rebut that. And they said that you cannot talk about Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology without being Eastern Orthodox, because you can't understand Eastern Orthodox without first living it, right?
Wow.
You have to first live the faith of Eastern Orthodox before you can talk about it. So you're not qualified to talk about it, even though Erick was quoting Eastern Orthodox people.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let me grant you that. The debates I have with Eastern Orthodox, and the main focus of the debate, I think a lot of it, what the thesis is, do we need to show a maximalist view of the papacy to prove the papacy, or a minimalist? And I'll explain what those two things are in just okay. I think that is up to the Catholic to decide, because you have to live the faith in order to know what the ecclesiology of Vatican I is teaching, right? You're not part of the faith, so according to your argument, you don't know the ecclesiology as well as the Catholics do, who are living the faith, right? This is their argument. I'm just kind of giving it back to them. So let's talk about this. This is where I unleash on my fist and do a Skip Bayless here. So I got some stuff. I mean, I was kind of just waiting to bring this stuff up. But this is where I think Erick won the debate, and folks missed a lot of the things that Erick was saying, because it was sort of said in passing, and it was kind of hand waved, or some of it wasn't even addressed in the first place, right? The first thing that we want to say is, what is the maximalist versus minimalist view? Because that's the important thing, is that was brought up in the debate. Ubie is saying, you got to show me the maximalist view of the papacy in the first millennium. What is the maximalist view? Is that the maximalist view is that the Pope stands up, declares a teaching in the church without consulting the bishops, without having any of their voice behind him, and by himself, and what Ubie likes to call acts alone, an autocrat pope, because he believes that Vatican I dogmatized an autocratic pope, where he can stand up in opposition to the bishops, declare something, and they all just bow down and say, well, this guy's infallible, so we accept what he says, right? Is that Vatican I? Is that what Vatican I taught? That's a complete misunderstanding of what Vatican I taught, especially when you look at the Relatio of Bishop Gasser. Now, what Erick was proposing, and Erick had a genius idea. He came up with this idea. Well, the Vatican I thing, where you said,
yeah, Erick, yeah.
You said Vatican I. You said
I don't know. I thought we could. I mean, we may have come to it together. I don't know.
So we kind of this specific part was your idea, because you had sent me a message, like a recorder message thing, and you said, and because I asked you, like, how are you going to approach the question? He's going to bring this up, act alone thing. And you said, well, the folks at Vatican I, when they defined Vatican I, they believed in the papal infallibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't.
Acting as a group. Yeah.
They're acting together with the Pope, right? But it's not about the act that matters; it's the belief that matters.
Yes.
How it's the belief behind it. That was your argument, Eric.
You did bring that up, Eric.
Yeah, that was genius, and he didn't know how to address that. But now, what is the minimalist view? The minimalist view is we just need to show that the folks in the first millennium believed in this infallibility, that this Pope has this prerogative, this gift. We don't have to show that he uses that by himself and acts alone, right? That's not the point of Vatican. But the point of Vatican I wasn't to isolate the Pope from the rest of the church and say, hey, look, this guy's going to separate himself, sever himself from the body, do a little acting, and then come back to the body and say, hey, look, this is the teaching. That's not what Vatican I is teaching. Now, here's what I want to say. Erick Ybarra opened the debate with a quote that was never addressed by Ubie, and it was the debate that was kind of in the background of the whole debate. It was the quote from the Swiss bishops. Now, if you're not familiar with the Swiss bishops, these guys, after Vatican I, there was two groups. There was a majority group and a minority group. The majority group wanted the definition of papal infallibility to stand, and the minority wanted to put a condition in the definition that said the Pope needs to consult or the bishops before he acts, right? And they rejected that. They said no, he does not need to, but he is morally obligated to, but he does not necessarily need to juridically. We believe that he will. Vatican I fathers always saw that the Pope is going to work with the bishops. They didn't say that he's not going to. They said we're always going to see him working with the brother bishops. But they cannot leave that. They cannot put that in the definition, because the very definition of papal infallibility is that it's infallible because the Holy Spirit makes sure it's infallible. So if you put a condition of consulting the bishops, now you've taken away the reason why the Pope is infallible. It's because of the Holy Spirit, not because of the consultation or because of the consent of the church behind it, right? It doesn't mean that the consent is not behind the infallible teaching. It just means that that consent does not make it infallible. It's the Holy Spirit that does, right? And so it was a very nuanced debate between the minority and the majority. Now, the Swiss bishops were part of the minority, and they wrote a letter to Pope Pius IX, who was the Pope at Vatican I, who confirmed the council, who opened the council, and all that stuff. So he would know what the teaching of Vatican I is better than Ubie Petrus would, right? Better than Eastern Orthodox would, right? So here's, and I'd like to read it if you guys don't mind, because it's a very important quote that Eric opened up with. Yeah, so it says, the Swiss bishops, and this was approved by a brief by Pope Pius IX. He approved this interpretation, and this is what they said. The definition of the council has not in any respect brought about a separation between the head and the members of the teaching body in the church. After the council, as before, the popes will exercise their office as doctors and chief pastors in the church, without forgetting that the bishops are appointed with them by the Holy Spirit, and according to the constitution of the church, as successors of the apostles, in order that, in concert with the Pope and in subordination to the successor of the Prince of the Apostles, they may govern the Church of God. As the popes did before the council, so now after they will continue to strengthen their brethren, the bishops of the faith. So also, in the government of the church, never will they undertake anything which concerns the universal church without taking the counsel and advice of the bishops. I'm going to read that part one more time. Never will they, the popes, undertake anything which concerns the universal church without taking the counsel and advice of the bishops. As they did before the council, so now also afterwards will the popes summon councils, ask the advice of the bishops scattered over the world, use every means in their power to obtain a full understanding, respecting that deposit of the faith which has been confided to the church. It will be according to this only an immutable role of the faith that they will decide, as if in court of supreme and last instance and infallibly for the universal church, all questions which can possibly arise on matters of faith or morals. Nevertheless, and this is they put a bow on this. It's kind of like what I was saying. They summarize it. They say, even when the popes use all possible means to obtain a profound knowledge of the question of the faith which is under consideration, as the duties of their office requires, morally obligated. Yes, is it not this purely human knowledge, however complete it may be, but it is the assistance of the Holy Spirit, that is to say, it is a special grace of his state peculiar to himself, which gives the Pope the inhabitable assurance of infallibility, and which guarantees to all the faithful with an absolute certainty that the definitions of faith of the supreme teaching authority of the Pope are exempt from error. So in other words, it's the Holy Spirit that makes sure that the Pope is infallible, not the consent, even though he is obligated to get the consent of the church before he decrees, right? It's a moral obligation, not a juridical obligation. And so this is these are the Swiss bishops writing to the Pope saying, this is how we understand papal infallibility according to Vatican I. Am I right? Is this right? And he writes back to them, and well, I don't know if he writes back to them, but he approves it, and he makes it into he approves it by a brief, right? And so there we have the Pope himself interpreting Vatican I, not separating the Pope from the bishops, but acting in concert with each other. So then this is what Erick brought up in the very beginning of his opening statement. This is where Erick, in my opinion, won the debate, because he was proving this thesis, which is the only thing he needs to prove. The minimalist is all he needs to prove. That's from the horse's mouth himself, Pope Pius IX, right? Mm-hmm. We can get into Bishop Gasser. He has Bishop Gasser has a section that he talks about Pope Agatho, and he looks at that as proof of papal infallibility. That's a council, right? So he's acting in concert with the bishops. But because the suggestion that he made, which Ubie is the whole joke we make, it's a suggestion, it's not a command. Gasser talks about that suggestion, right? He says that suggestion, when everyone agreed with it, their agreement wasn't like they're judging him or not. It's their adherence to it, right? Their adherence to it. And so that was an instance to Gasser of papal infallibility. But wait a minute, he did not act alone. So how could Gasser prove papal infallibility by showing where the Pope Agatho acted with the brother bishops? Because that's not what you need to prove papal infallibility. Okay, so, and one last thing I want to say is he said, he asked you about Pope Leo. Why didn't Gasser use Pope Leo as proof of infallibility? He actually did. It just wasn't. It wasn't in the section of here's the tradition of papal infallibility. Here's why I'm going to prove it. It's Pope Leo this, Pope Agatho that. He said it elsewhere in a different section. He kind of says it in passing. If anybody wants to read it, if you just pull up the Relatio and then do a word search for Flavian, you'll see that he says, and I don't want to read because I keep reading things here. I don't want to bore you guys.
Great, brother.
But he talks about how in passing that Pope Leo's tome was infallible, right? It was infallible, and he's giving the idea that it was an ex cathedra. So that's what I just wanted to unleash through the Skip Bayless pound.
But isn't that amazing? And I brought this out in my opening statement because of Elijah talking about this. It's amazing how all of the Catholics at Vatican I were able to look back upon these events with popes and bishops and consensus and see Vatican I.
Yes.
But when the Orthodox look at that, they're demanding papal isolationism as the minimum for real evidence. And that's really the nature of the difference is and something I brought out in a stream recently that when I did a stream with a young man named Ben Bollinger.
Yes.
We did a show on the papacy and the Orthodox and all that. And I had made the point that even if we could find like 10 episodes where the Pope issued a command, I don't know, to India, and and the Indians obey him, right?
Yeah.
Without any commentary as to the nature of the Pope's authority in that event, people could just say, well, they heard the command and they agreed with it themselves. So they did what he commanded, not because they felt constrained, but because they actually thought it was the best course of action.
Right.
And so you have conciliarism anyway. Like, so in other words, I think one of the things that's so genius about this is that with it's only by the commentary that's supplied do you actually get either the papal theory or the pure equa conciliar theory.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think explaining the differences in that way, I think it exposes Ubie's method as not a very good one. I mean, there are some good methods that an unorthodox can take.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that method was the strongest.
Right. Now, let me say this, because a lot of folks think that Erick did not present a maximalist presentation. What they miss is that he did actually come up with a maximalist. It was it Pope Galatius? If you remind me,
Yeah.
remember, I wanted to bring this up and actually read it to the folks, but I didn't have time to pull up the quote. But you bring up man, you sent it to me on the messenger thing. I wish I had it. You bring
where
up,
he says he could without a synod.
yes, yeah. If you can talk about that, because that was the maximalist presentation or case that you brought up.
Yeah, that was done very well.
He didn't know how to deal with that. So if you want to talk about that too.
Yeah, I just, it was Pope Galatius. He's one of the successors of Pope Leo the Great.
Mhm.
And he just continued beating the same drum. And one of the notes was that because Denny in the past, Denny in the past had said, you don't really have evidence for Vatican I until the Pope himself does something without a synod. Without a synod. And Pope Galatius makes the point, like, oh, well, the Apostolic See, with or without a synod, can both condemn or exonerate. And so, at the very least, Galatius is making that theological point.
Yes.
Now we
Right.
can disagree with Galatius.
Mm-hmm.
We could say that he's wrong. We could say that he represents a departure.
Right.
We could say all those things. But the debate was, is Vatican I manifest in the 5th and 6th centuries? And Galatius just happens to be property to the Eastern Orthodox.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So
According to them, he's not even property for Catholicism, because Catholicism is a creation of Hildebrand, or Leo the Ninth.
Yep.
yeah. So just folks need to think about what this is. So Erick is being accused of only presenting the minimalist view of the papacy because supposedly he doesn't have a maximalist case to present. The minimalist is all you need, according to the Vatican I fathers themselves, according to Pope Leo, who was at Vatican I, according to Gasser, who wrote the Relatio, that the official interpretation of Vatican I, according to all these official folks, Swiss bishops and clergy in the Catholic Church. All you need is the minimalist, because that's how it's supposed to work, right? So that's all you need. However, Erick went above what you need, and he actually presented a maximalist case with Pope Galatius, in which Ubie responded with, well, that was letter, what was that, 12 or 14? What letter was that you were reading? I can't remember which one
I think
it was.
It was 10 or 14. 14,
okay. So letter 14 of Galatius. And he said his response was, well, in letter 1 of Galatius, he says similar things, but then he says he did it in concert with the bishops or something like that. He kind of put it in context where, and if folks want to read letter 1 of Galatius or letter 14, or just watch the debate, you can't respond that way because you have to deal with the actual letter 14. You can't say letter 1 puts letter 14 in context. That doesn't work like that, right? That was his response. So the maximalist case that Erick gave him, he had no answer to. So when I say Erick won the debate, I actually have reasons why I say that, because he actually had a very solid case for a minimalist view, which it's all he needed to do. But on top of that, he gave a cherry or a bonus on top and said, all right, if you don't like the minimalist view, here's a maximalist case. And Ubie had no answer to that.
Yeah. And I thought the libellus of Hormisdas was also another instance of the papacy at work, because Eastern lands were affected by it, and it's clear that the commentary on it was that this is going based off of, hey, basically was saying, look, Leo was bad news for you guys. Now he's at the top.
Right.
He's like, you guys, Leo was at the bottom and now he's at the top. And that took the character of the division between the Chalcedonians and the non-Chalcedonians.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Do you brothers have any other points you'd like to touch, or do you want to take a few Q&A?
The Q&A.
Can I
go ahead, brother. Definitely. Yeah, go ahead.
There was a gentleman on X who wanted me to ask this question.
Sure.
So he says, which Greek or Russian ecclesiology aligns more closely with the church's historical foundations? Would the Russian Orthodox Church reject the notion admitted by Ubie Petrus in the debate that a pope could bind an entire council on the whole world? I'm not sure if Ubie admitted that, but I'm not qualified to answer that question because I'm not Eastern Orthodox. So I haven't lived the faith enough to be able to understand their ecclesiology. So I don't know, Erick, do you want to touch on that? Is it the Russian? I don't think it's going to be the Russian Orthodox Church that aligns with it. It's probably going to be more Constantinople, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think what he might be alluding to is when I asked Denny if he believed that the Bishop of Rome has the right if he had the right to call a universal ecumenical council.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, if you guys remember, I asked twice because I couldn't believe what he said.
Right.
But look, the guy's smart. Maybe he had a way of figuring this out. He said yes. But see, in my opinion, as soon as you say the Bishop of Rome has the right to call an obligatory ecumenical council, such that absentees are punished, you're already getting into, if not the house, the street of Vatican I.
Oh, you're in the house. Yeah, you're in the house, man.
You're in the backyard at least, yeah.
Yeah. So when he admitted that was interesting, because that actually doesn't match what contemporary Orthodox believe, in my estimation. I don't know of any ecclesial. I don't even know of a single theologian. The closest I could think of perhaps might be the late Archbishop of Pergamum, John Zizulas, who spoke very highly about the divine institution of the primate and the synod. But I don't think he would have said that the ecumenical patriarch had the right to call a binding universal council. I think what he believed was that once all the patriarchs agree, then he can make an obligatory synod, which is kind of like saying you got to get everybody's permission. Yeah. Of course, the Russians don't believe that, and Denny admitted that. He's like, their theologians don't accept what I'm saying.
Right. He admitted that in the debate. He admitted that.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, one thing that I've noted, and I've said it so many times, and I know everybody here has echoed it. Subdeacon has echoed it, and he's not even a Chalcedonian. Is to me the biggest Achilles heel for Eastern Orthodoxy are the councils where we were united to one another, and they agreed to the papal claims at one point in history. The amount of revisionism that they attempt to do to try to wash that away is shocking. It really is shocking. Subdeacon has even pointed out, look, as a Chalcedonian, there's only one way to go. If you're a Chalcedonian, it's Catholicism. He's pointed out many times over. That to me is the one thing that I've brought out a lot. You've brought it out, Eric, in your published works. I brought it out in my published works, Elijah as well, in blogs that you've put out, shows you've done. To me, I simply, and I heard the very best. I've heard the very best arguments Ubie put forth, where all always doesn't mean always, and all those kinds of arguments that you put forth. The claims that the ecumenical councils, where East and West are united, are striking, and they are shocking for one that tries to deny the papal claims. They're very difficult to get around.
Right.
To where if I was a modern day ortho bro, I would have a lot of trouble dealing with it. That's why guys like Jay Dyer have to throw out the low-hanging fruit of, oh, well, clown masses. Oh, well, Pope Francis would be a heretic no matter what. Tossing out sedevacantist arguments, in essence, in order to deal with the fact that Eastern Orthodoxy cannot deal with the papal claims from the councils. You go the Jay Dyer route, which is a sedevacantist route, which ultimately you're in deep trouble no matter what route you go. Eric, if you can give your thoughts on that, perhaps.
Yeah. I think that like when I debated Jay Dyer, 4 years ago, the debate started off with the Council of Nicaea, Canon 6. But as soon as we got into the history of that canon, he was scooching real strong towards the Freemasonic era, the Vatican II, the temple prayers, the mosque prayers, and epistemology, which I thought was interesting because my position didn't really have that much of an impact, whether I was an evidentialist or a coherentist or a presuppositionalist. All I was doing is I was saying, Jay Dyer, you have your own saints that you cite all the time, right? You cite Palamas, you cite Blacarne, the Cypria, you cite Photius, you cite all these guys. Why do you cite them? Because they're authorities. So let's just go into those territories and see what they have to say, And he was saying, yeah, but you're an evidentialist. But I'm just doing what you do. So anyway, I thought it was a very strange thing. I'm assuming that if we ever do an exchange with Jay again, he's also going to quickly go right to the Freemasonic era. And so that's probably what the discussion is going to be about.
There's no doubt about that.
That's the thing about the mosque that you mentioned right now, Eric. He was saying what about it?
Oh, yeah, because 2 popes
prayed in the mosque.
3 popes.
Yeah, but they have a mosque in their monastery in St. Catherine's in Sinai.
Oh, yeah, there's tons of documented stuff. Yeah, there's tons of documented stuff.
But
in the actual monastery, there's a mosque there.
Yeah, but remember their retort is that, well, it's not problematic for us to be united to a heretic because we don't have papal infallibility. That is such a cop-out. It is definitely problematic when you examine the fact that a lot of the problems we've got going on in our house, they've got going on in their house as well. You can mirror the problems that we've got happening here, happening over there. Their way out of it is by claiming, well, we're not united. We don't have to be united to one that holds the papal infallibility, as if every statement of Francis equates to the level of papal infallibility. To me, it's a total cop-out. It really, really is a cop-out. The inability to deal with actual arguments and to go to scandals and to go to, this Pope prayed here in the mosque. Well, man, you got patriarchs that called Muhammad an apostle.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Cyril Lacar, who was a Calvinist, venerated by many Eastern Orthodox. spread Calvinism. You got all kinds of issues. Let's get real. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's compare, look at Holy Writ, look at the fathers, look at the councils. And, I think that trying to go the low hanging fruit route is to, avoid dealing with the real issues. I really, truly believe that. I think it's an avoidance.
Right. Yeah. Because the issue there, the whole, like what you said, William, they don't have papal infallibility, or we don't have papal infallibility, so it doesn't apply to us. But that's not the point. The point is you have a rule or a canon or a teaching that says that if the, patriarch or bishop does X, Y, and Z, that they are supposed to be excommunicated, right? Or deposed. So if Patriarch of Constantinople is doing the same thing that the Pope is doing, why isn't he excommunicated? It just takes time. Yep. The church realizes these things. That takes about 50 years, and then we'll excommunicate him posthumously, just like they did with Honorius.
Yeah.
So that's.
I think the points that you guys make are excellent points, and I think for that reason, I just have one sentence to make here. We got to focus on the best of both sides. When we want to look at, the Oriental Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox, the Catholic Church, let's compare the best, the three of them at their best, and if we find that one of them is the victor, then fair game. That hats off to that process. But when you try to take that very unfair route, I think it cheapens the whole process.
True. Very good point. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. No doubt at all. Do want to be respectful to you brothers' time. Do you all have maybe 10, 15 minutes for a few Q&A?
Sure.
I'll go with that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know we got a few earlier, so people send your questions right now before we run out of time. We got one earlier, and whoever wants to take it, you Elijah, you Eric, or anybody, I can touch upon it as well. What does the prefect do? By the way, Steamats, thank you for the super chat. What does the prefect do? And is it okay that the Pope picked a female? I'm a non-Catholic starting to study ancient churches now. Peace and blessings. Does anybody want to touch this one with a 10-foot or a 20-foot pole?
Subdeacon, I think this is a good one for you to. I couldn't even tell you. I have no idea. Did he pick a female? Is that what happened?
Yes, the first female prefect of a Vatican dicastery, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be Eastern Orthodox now then.
Yeah, it's a leadership role. Like the prefecture is an old Roman term. It's where it's used today to talk about somebody who's a president, basically.
Yeah, 100%.
So, are there roles like that in the ancient church? I really don't think so.
Have you guys seen Conclave?
No, I haven't. I haven't
seen it. Terrible movie.
Horrible.
Oh yeah.
Don't waste your time.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Don't. Yeah. Pope ends up being a transgender at the end. It's crazy.
Oh man.
Yeah. I'm sorry for ruining it. I'm sorry for ruining it for you.
No, I'm glad you did, because
of a movie.
It's disgusting.
No, yeah.
Biological female ends up being the Pope. Sick.
Well, when you had CNN promoting the movie on their channel, on their their channel, that's what, when I saw it on CNN, I was like, that's not a movie I'm going to watch, because CNN would not be promoting a Catholic movie.
That's pretty bad, right, Subdeacon?
Absolutely. Maybe we could do a show, William, on the Mary movie that recently came out. I don't know if you saw it yet.
We could do a show on the Mary movie with the creator of it.
Oh wow! Okay,
yeah,
of course, William knows it.
William with the name drops. This guy.
Yeah. I got access
William,
to that.
William
revolutionized reason and theology.
Yes. He brought all those guys. I wouldn't be surprised if one day this guy invites me to his show and Pope Francis is there.
It's one thing is, after the Ubie debate, we were hanging out in the studio, and Denny said, it would be really cool if you can get Father Richard Price on the show. And I thought to myself, we'd need William to do that.
I do speak with him, Dr. Brock, and many others often. I do. It's a blessing. Yeah, people may not know, but a lot of those early guests, I had a little part in bringing them on to R&T back in the day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about that. But by the grace of God, to briefly answer, thank you for that super chat. Yeah, to echo what Eric said, it's an administrative role. I'm not aware of anybody holding that in the past. But hey, there's no doctrinal restriction preventing women from holding administrative roles. I really don't have much else to say in regards to that. I do believe this one is for you, Subdeacon, and I'd love to, maybe each of us can chime in and give our thoughts. Thank you for the super chat earlier. Echoes of Alexandria. For Subdeacon Daniel, as an OO myself, I was wondering, to what extent can we hold to the papacy, if any way at all?
The whole thing.
I'm actually I would love to hear what our side has to say about the relatio and Bishop Gasser, because I don't think that was ever presented to us, and if it has, we're not good. We probably didn't read it. So I I really want to see like what how we would deal with that.
Would you? Well, let me briefly interrupt. Would you ever be willing to do a show and talk about it with us?
Of course.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah. The last show I did on RNT, the very, very last show I did, it was me and Eric, and then Elijah was there, like chilling in the background, and Michael. And it was about the role of the papacy at Ephesus 1.
Oh,
yeah.
That was the very last show that I did there. But
well, you'll probably be back on soon, right?
But that's a perfect show to end your RNT career.
Yeah.
And you never know, he might be back on soon.
Because the next show would have been Chalcedon. So
yeah. Yeah, Michael was doing you the favor there,
Right.
Didn't want you to have to do a Chalcedon show.
Right.
Yeah. John asks, what about adopting post-schism saints like the 21 Coptic martyrs? Should all sides do more of this? I think that helps heal matters. Now, for myself, I've got no issue with the 21 Coptic martyrs. Every now and then, I'll run into people that will bombard my YouTube channel saying, well, this clearly contradicts Chalcedon. This is a major problem. I have no issue with the 21 Coptic martyrs. Do you brothers want to comment on it at all? Maybe you, Eric. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, when this topic comes up, it's usually folks who are trying to make sense of former statements that were strongly exclusionary. Cantate Domino, Eugene IV, and Boniface VIII, and things like this. Right. But there's a way to make it not make sense, right? It's just
right.
Just put them on just put them on the table. It looks like a contradiction,
right?
But if you want to synthesize it, all those condemnatory statements of the past, they assumed the will was turned away from the will of Christ, and so it assumes ill will, bad faith on the persons. Even if they were martyrs, like Eugene IV, Eugene IV said, it doesn't matter if they're martyrs, right? So that's what this whole issue with the Coptic martyrs. You've got a lot of people that say, oh, but Florence passed this decree which says that even if you're a martyr, you're anathematized. But the thing is, there's two kinds of martyrs outside of the church. There's the martyr who is viciously opposing the will of Christ. Yeah. And then you've got a martyr who, from our point of view, they're acting in good faith. They have no opposition to what they've been shown, the light that they've been shown. And so these men on the shore there that died for the faith, they first of all, putting them in the Roman martyrology, that's not technically like a full-blown canonization, but it's basically saying, hey, look, these men are in heaven. These men can be remembered as heroes. And I think that that's the way to reconcile it, that these men are looked upon as, not vicious opposers to the Roman Catholic Church. That they gave their life in good faith. That's the way to reconcile it. I understand that doesn't digest well for an aggressive skeptic, but if you accept the other evidences for the faith, then that will predispose you to accept some of the reconciliations that can be made.
100%. Nothing else to add. Subdeacon, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys remember this time last year, something came out from the Oriental Orthodox side saying that dialogue has ceased with the Roman Catholic Church.
I recall.
Yeah. The context around that was actually not what everybody thinks it was.
Right.
The context around that was they wanted to start the Christological dialogue from scratch. They didn't want to keep building on what was already done from the 20th century. That was the context. It was Christology. It wasn't anything else. But relations, like diplomatic relations or friendly relations, brotherly relations, are actually better than they've ever been.
Wow.
Last year, there was this crazy story. I don't want to take too long to get into the details, where Rome gave the Coptic Church this very ancient, big cathedral in Milan for free. They just donated to them.
Wow.
And
must have high electricity.
And
full of Chalcedonian murals.
A lot of the martyrs being canonized by Rome, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. So the 21 Coptic martyrs are the ones ISIS killed. I think also the Ethiopian ones too.
Yes,
there's two groups.
You're correct.
Yeah, this is, from what I've seen. Maybe Eric can correct me. From what I've seen, this is unprecedented. I don't think this has ever happened before.
No.
Yeah. So these are huge steps, and from His Holiness from my patriarch, from what he said, relations are very good and they're progressing. So this is what we want, right?
So what we want from you, Subdeacon, is to go back to these guys and tell them, look, there's this document called the Bishop Gasser Relatio. That will start the conversation, hopefully.
Let's see.
Lotus Swift, thank you for the super sticker. God bless you, and God bless you as well, Chris. Said it because come on, guys. Rome wasn't even a city until the 2nd century or the 4th. Jay Dyer helped me. Okay, Crusader Cal, God bless you. Thank you for the super chat. Hey, Will, much love and respect. You helped lead me home to Rome, I believe you wanted to say. It's popping in to say good evening, Papa-like, and send you a tithe. I'm going to bed. God bless you. Crusader Cal, have a good rest. You've had to see our disgusting mugs all night, so you're going to have to get a lot of rest, brother. God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Good night, brother.
Yeah, thank you. Theodoro. Thank you, Ian. God bless you. Theodoro. How much and how deeply have you all read or researched the various Sedevacantist authors and clerics like Bishop Sanborn or Father Sakata? I don't know about these brothers up here, but I have read a lot of them. I don't know about you brothers up here, but I've read them.
I haven't read them.
I have.
I've read them in depth. Yes, I have. Don't recommend them. I've read them in depth, though. Jonathan Talks. I think Jonathan Talks might be an apologist. I'm not sure. Could be wrong.
I think I was on his show along.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I thought I recognized the name. I could be wrong. Yeah. Do you think, to some extent, some Catholic apologists underemphasize the scriptural basis, like Isaiah 22, Matthew 16, for the papacy? I find texts like Luke 22, John 21 are underemphasized as well in discussions with EOs. I think, to be quite honest with you, I think a lot of the Bible gets under-discussed when dialoguing with the Eastern Orthodox. Maybe it is because a lot of Catholics are very poorly catechized on the Bible. The other issue being, I think we usually, when dialoguing with Eastern Orthodox, and Eric can chime in here, a lot of the times we get into the weeds of early church history. We go to the fathers, we go to the councils. but we aim to definitely talk a lot about the Bible when we go on Sam's and we talk about the Bible and history. I think everybody here on this panel, even Subdeacon, would agree that there is a biblical case to be made for the papacy, even though Subdeacon would come to a different conclusion than we do. Generally, I think that a lot of these passages tend to get underutilized. Eric, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I greatly disappointed some Catholics over the years because of Isaiah 22.
Right, right.
But let me say something about it. So the only reason why I avoided it is not because I don't think that there's anything to get from it, because I think from a biblical case, it's really hard to deny the inference. Keys, opening, shutting, right? But because my work was so much within the Greek Orthodox, Latin, Catholic debate, I always had to prefer the sources that both sides unquestionably accept.
Right.
And so I've tended to try to, not avoid it, but focus on like the other things that you see in history. But come to find out, there's things that are being unearthed about Isaiah 22 and Matthew 16 in some of the fathers. So is it underemphasized? Probably. I tended to focus more on the things that the Byzantines already accepted, and so that's why you don't see it come up that much. Although in my book I do bring it up in the beginning chapter on the papacy and scripture. I quote from several scholars that hint to the Eliakim connection, right? Because I wanted the readers to at least know that, hey, if you want to go down a hunt for this, there's this opportunity to do that. And Jonathan Talks is absolutely right about John 21 as well. That's actually more than Matthew 16. John 21 is probably got the bulk of the scriptural citations for papal power.
Oh yeah,
feed my sheep. That probably comes up more than Matthew 16.
Yeah, in councils as well.
In councils as well, yeah.
Yes.
And this is also, and it's the last comment. This is also a theme that it could relate to Oriental Orthodox on regional levels, right? Because I mean, there's councils in the 5th century where they already understand the figure of Peter to symbolize the sealing of authority in a region.
Elijah used to make the point all the time that Oriental Orthodoxy is ecclesially closer in structure to Roman Catholicism in its high Petrine view.
Right. Yeah.
And on that point, I'm sorry, Elijah, let me just briefly say on that point, in our papacy book, we spent a lot of time with the connection between Isaiah 22 and Matthew 16. But funny enough, a lot of the time we spend there is because you find connections in the Syriac Fathers. You do find connections there. So interestingly enough, Eric, you know that. So, that is quite interesting. And I'll make the announcement, even though we haven't announced the platform yet. I will be debating Father Ramsey on the connection of Isaiah 22, Matthew 16. God willing, we'll have a debate for that. Hopefully sometime around the spring. Yes, we'll be debating that topic. So that'll be fun, because I think that Father Ramsey is a robust intellectual, and I enjoy dialoguing with him. I think he does his homework. I think he's excellent. So I really am looking forward to that. Elijah, you're going to say something, and I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Well, you actually said it. That was one of the things I wanted to say, is that your book talks about the connection. So people need to check that out. The second thing is Swan Sona had a debate with Ubie Petrus on this very topic, Isaiah 22. Ubie had no problem with the connection. He said that the connections is legit, right? But it's not papacy. It's bishop, I think is what he was saying, is like it's the office of the bishop is what it's pointing to, not the office of a universal head above the church kind of thing. But yeah, that was the only thing I wanted to say on that.
Yeah, definitely. I have no idea what to tell you, Luis Angel. I don't know what to tell you there. I don't know where else you would find your drone news. I don't know. I don't know, my friend.
Yeah, Reason Theology has become more of like headline news show now, from what I could see.
Well, I think it's called the Michael Lofton Show.
I have not followed in years. I didn't know. So he's doing drone stuff now?
Well, I think he did a lot of shows on the drones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called the Michael Lofton Show. I don't think it's called the Reason and Theology anymore.
Gotcha.
RNT. Yeah.
Gotcha. Ian Realm. Born into OO, I see the Roman Catholic Church, Papacy, and Filioque. If I'm allowed to take communion, why should I do a full conversion? I don't quite understand. Are you saying that you were born into Oriental Orthodoxy? Did you ever follow it? And you're convicted of the Papacy and the Filioque? If you're not in full communion, you'd want to get into full communion before going to take communion. Why should you do a full conversion? Look, I'm going to tell you what I think anybody in this panel will tell you. If you were born into Oriental Orthodoxy, and of course I'm Catholic, so I believe it is the fullness of the truth. But let's say you were born into Oriental Orthodoxy. Let's say you never practiced your faith. Maybe you didn't grow up practicing it, and you say, okay, now I've studied Catholicism. I'm convicted by it. Study Oriental Orthodoxy in depth. Learn the very best arguments you have. Look at subdeacon stuff. It is not good. It is elite level. I consider it to be top tier elite level.
Yes.
And I hope to have dialogue. We're going to have dialogues in the future. His team with myself, Dr. Goff, and Father Coppice. Can't wait for that. Look into the very best Oriental Orthodoxy has to offer. Look into the best Catholicism has to offer. And of course, and when I say the best Eastern Orthodoxy has to offer, get their top hitting scholars. There are great ones out there. Do not be confused and think that the Ortho Bro community is the best they've got. It is not. Look to the stuff St. Vlad's are putting out. Look to the stuff Tikhon Pino is putting out. He's a friend of mine. I know him. Look to the stuff Dimitrikopoulos is putting out. Look to their top people. They've got top scholars. Don't think the Ortho Bro community is representative of the VO. Then you're going to have a very low view of them. You're going to think that they're all buffoons. They have legit people doing legit work. Just that the Ortho Bros are very low level. But they do have legit people doing legit work. My advice to you is exhaust everything. Just, really, if you've got the time, really just delve in and study as best as you can. And if at the end of the day, you come back in a few months or even a year, you say, William, I did my research. And I've decided that, Catholicism is the answer. I'm going to say, amen. God bless you. If you come back in a year, you say, William, I'm convinced of, I'm going to tell you, get the heck out of here and go to the Lion's Den. You're not welcome here. We're praying for you, Ian Brown. We'll be praying for you, brother. Definitely. Any thoughts, you brothers, here in the panel?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think that, the questioner is at the last bit. He's also referring to, the fact that at Vatican II, you've got one of the documents, Orientalium Ecclesiarum, which says that there's going to be sort of a relaxation on the policy for communion for the separated Eastern brethren. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people go there and read the one line that says they can receive communion, but they don't read the context. Okay, the context is it says that it has to be in a situation where there cannot be the scandal of indifferentism. And that may be hard to achieve, but it can exist. If you're an Oriental Orthodox person or an Eastern Orthodox person, and you're coming to ask for communion at a Catholic church, that already assumes that you don't believe that the Catholic Church is demonic. Otherwise, why would you be coming to receive communion, right? Mm-hmm. And it's set up for those situations where, like, I'll give you a very easy example. If you have like an Egyptian woman who is dying in a hospital in Italy, and she can only talk to her priest on the phone. She can talk to her loved ones on the phone. And there's a Catholic chaplain there, and she asks if she could have communion in her final hours. And she says, I already asked my priest. He says he's okay with it. Can this happen? Those are the kind of situations where communion has been allowed. It's not
Correct.
for like Jay Dyer to come and have to just come up and receive communion, or just any old person to come up. Why would they come up in anyway when they're railing against the Catholic Church in the first place?
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, there was a relaxation in the policy, but we got to understand the spirit of that relaxation. It's not a free for all. I understand it can be easily abused, but if we're going to be fair, there is guidance to it. It's not just a open door for everybody.
Fantastic point. Anything to add there, Elijah?
Yes. So we have to say this. I think it's out of charity that we say this. But if someone is convinced that Catholicism is the true church and their arguments is correct, and they refuse to enter the church, that's not good for their souls, right?
Right.
There's hell is real. So if you're convinced that that's God's church and he started that church, and you refuse to enter it for whatever reason, that's a very serious matter. So I have to say that, brother to brother or brother to sister, I'm not sure. That comment was kind of, as the young people say, sus. I think it was Subdeacon that left that comment. So if you're looking to do that, then come on, water's fine here, kind of, not really
trying
that
to stir up controversy, right? Trying to stir up controversy. I know him. He's like, I'm gonna cause controvery among the Chalcedonians tonight.
You know why, William? Because Ihab knows me in real life here, how close I am to the Chaldeans, the Chaldean priests and the deacon. We're all very, very close.
It's cool. That's actually kind of cool.
These jokes around at each other all the time.
And you're actually closer to the Chaldeans than the Syriac Catholics are to the Chaldeans, which is sad.
Oh yeah, I am. Absolutely, I am.
I think everybody is, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how, before we wrap up, I know we're coming towards the end. It's funny how for so many years we've been talking about the papacy and discussions. But another thing we've been talking about for many years in dialogue, and I know Eric is aware that Elijah, myself, and Subdeacon, we also talk Mariology a whole lot. Those are two areas where we spend a lot of time talking about stuff. So we definitely got to do more shows in the future. We definitely do. And I don't know why Eric is not a moderator on my channel yet. I can only imagine, I'm making him a moderator. I can only imagine that Subdeacon pulled some trickery and removed him as a moderator to cause controversy among the Chalcedonians. I know him, man. You guys are great. It was a blessing to being back with you all, the old crew. And for people that are wondering, we stay in touch, all of us, with one another. We all stay in touch. None of us are fractured. We are brothers just as much as we were brothers back when we were doing R&T together. I want everybody to know that. If you don't see us together, simply because we get busy. Back when we did R&T, we had a lot more time back then. A lot more. We've gotten busier. Our schedules are busier now. But thank the good Lord, we're able to get back together again, and we look forward to doing it many more times. Before we wrap up, brothers, I'd like to give you all time to put in a plug for anything y'all might be working on. Put in a plug. Eric, where can people find you? What are you working on? You get any more debates coming up other than the 3-on-3? Anything you're working on, brother?
So on the 26th of January, I have Father Patrick, John Ramsey. He's coming on my channel to sort of pick up the sword from where Ubie dropped it, to talk about the issues in that debate. That's going to be on my channel on the 26th. And I'm writing a book on Pope Honorius. It's been a long project. It's going to be a small book. My goal is to write small books now, so that, because in this age, people they just don't read big, huge books anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to write a small book on Pope Honorius, and I would like to put together a small pamphlet of all the research I did for this debate that I did with Ubie Petrus. And so I'm working on that. I've also got a book on divorce and remarriage and the fathers. That's going to be a while away from now. But if to find me, I post simultaneously on Facebook, Substack, and X. And then I also have a Patreon, Classical Christian Thought.
Fantastic. Definitely. Great. Definitely. And feel free, if any of the mods can link anything that Erick posted there, please do so. And if they don't, I will link his channel and how to get in touch with him down below afterwards. My brother, Elijah, my friend, where can people find you? And you've gotten active again. By the grace of God, you're back to being active. Where can people find you, brother?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel called Underground Catholicism. If you type in Elijah Yasi, it should pop up. I did a video yesterday. I have a debate on the 15th with a gentleman that Erick mentioned earlier, Subdeacon. I don't know if he's a father now. Joseph Swayden. Yeah,
Swayden. Yeah,
I believe 15th. He is. I'm not
He's
sure.
part of the True Orthodox Church.
Okay. So Father Swayden, we'll be doing a debate on the papacy on the 15th. I think it's on his channel, but I'll air it on my channel as well. And then I did a show yesterday on papacy and ecumenical councils. I have a blog, which I rarely ever write because I just do videos now. It's called undergroundcatholicism.com. But I'll be more active, as William said. We'll be on Swansona's channel with Erick, doing a debate review for another debate review for the Ubie Petrus one. And I have another discussion dialogue with Eastern Orthodox end of the month. Now, I do want to say this. I've asked Luigi, who's Eastern Orthodox. I've asked Craig Trulia. I've asked several folks on X to come to my channel or to have some sort of dialogue. And they haven't responded, or some of them have said no, and some of them just ignored my request. So I'd really like to have that dialogue of what the papacy is, rather than debating if the papacy is true or not. Let's debate how it functions and what it is before we get to that point. So if you guys are watching this, Craig or Luigi or Ubie, whoever, let's have these discussions in charity. So
your brother,
did any of them accept? Did any of them accept?
No. Luigi said I have to debate Ubie first and then debate him. So.
As if Luigi is some kind of titan. As if that guy's some kind of titan.
What about Mario? No?
I'm not sure if I've asked Mario.
Who on earth is Luigi?
He had some. His father was having some medical issues that he posted on X. So I don't want to bother him with things like that. But I'd love to have a dialogue.
Mario is a cool guy. Mario actually is very. He's
down to earth. Yeah, he's a cool guy. He is.
He's a no BS guy, but but that's that's what makes his character interesting. And he's friendly. You just got to learn his personality.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him. I mean, I want to be friends with all of them, right? I don't want to have any beef with anyone. So if they want to come on my channel, I'll go on their channel. I don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter where it is. Or we can go on Sam's channel and put him to sleep. So
look at Sam. You're getting love from Sam tonight.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
You're getting love from him tonight, man.
Man.
My voice will make you holy. That's what he's saying.
Subdeacon, brother, put in a plug. Where can people find you? What are you working on, brother? Lay it out.
Thanks, William, again. Appreciate it. So at Daniel Kakish, this is my handle on YouTube. It's The Lion's Den is the name of the channel. I'm going to have a review. There was a Maronite subdeacon in Australia who put out an episode, The Papacy in the Syriac Tradition.
I heard that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm going to respond to it. You guys would
cool.
love it. Yeah.
When are you doing that?
It's coming up maybe within a month or so. Yeah.
Fantastic. You definitely got to let us know when you do that.
Absolutely. You got it.
Awesome. Sam in the house. I think Sam is going live tonight as well. Sam, put the link. People head on over there. We're excited to go on with you eventually, very soon, Sam. Everybody, God bless you all. Yes, here it is. Here's a link. Everybody, God bless you all. Hope you all had a great time. Do us a favor. Check out everybody's channel here. Support the brothers if you are able to. But if you cannot support in any other way, support us with your prayers. Pray for all of us. Subscribe to the channels as well. And flood the comment section for the algorithm. Head over to Erick's channel. Make sure you subscribe over there. Subdeacon, Elijah. And if you're here for the first time, make sure you subscribe here. Everybody, God bless you. We're going to be back very soon. Brothers, it was great being back with you. It's always incredible being back with you. I'll be back with you all again soon. And I can guarantee you we're not going to get together and talk about drones. I'm sorry. We're not doing that. Sorry. Theology here, guys.